your guide to all things manic pixie dream girl. Welcome back to A Study of Style, the series on this channel where we take a look at a specific fashion aesthetic and do our best to break it down. In today's episode, we'll be examining the often misunderstood manic pixie dream girl, whose passion for life and endless whimsy has made her one of the most despised archetypes in film, while her eclectic style choices have made her one of the most beloved. We'll be taking a look at how this controversial trope came to be, influential examples within the genre, its key visual characteristics, and how the manic pixie dream girl died. Let's get into it. Certain stock characters have been staples of the film industry for decades, like the dumb jock, the blonde bombshell, and the femme fatale. But in the early 2000s, a new trope rose to prominence: the manic pixie dream girl. Film critic Nathan Rabin coined the now infamous term in a 2007 review of Elizabethtown, saying, quote, "Dunst embodies a character type I like to call the manic pixie dream girl. The manic pixie dream girl exists solely in the fevered imaginations of sensitive writer-directors to teach broodingly soulful young men to embrace life and its infinite mysteries and adventures. The manic pixie dream girl is an all-or-nothing proposition. Audiences either want to marry her instantly, or they want to commit grievous bodily harm against them and their immediate family. In these films, the men are awkward, introverted creatures who can't make heads or tails of the world, and when they attempt to pursue others romantically, it's rarely successful. That's where the manic pixie dream girl comes to save the day. She's cool, confident, and carefree, everything he isn't. And almost instantly, she makes it her mission to show him how to live life to the fullest. She will not take no for an answer. And while he's slightly annoyed by her eccentricities, he still welcomes the attention. And slowly but surely, he gets swept up in the excitement. The main reason their relationship works is because he doesn't have to put himself out there. She comes to him. And no matter what he says or does, she never takes offense to it. She's totally selfless, to the point that she has no sense of self. She only exists to inspire him and cheer him on. And if she happens to die at the end of the movie, well, that's just another lesson for him to learn from. Because the manic pixie dream girl can't exist without the mediocre guy who falls in love with her, she's given the responsibility of being the interesting one. So she'll play the harmonica, dance in the rain, and have an endless supply of quirky hats. But in spite of this individuality, she can never be the main character, because that would provide her with too much depth and direction. In other words, the manic pixie dream girl isn't a person, she's a plot device. Although depictions of the manic pixie dream girl peaked in the 2000s and early 2010s, iterations have existed in the film industry for nearly a century. But back in the day, she would have been known as a flibberty-gibbet, meaning an excessively talkative and excitable person. Although she wasn't identified as a specific stock character, the prevalence of the trope likely had to do with how films were framed in general back then, with the story often being told from the perspective of the male character, while the female character was mainly used to advance his journey. Eccentric women who helped men come out of their shell were staples of the screwball comedy genre, and early examples have been cited as 1938's Bringing Up Baby, 1942's The Palm Beach Story, and 1955's 7-Year Itch. The latter is probably the most egregious example in my opinion, as the female character literally isn't given a name. She's just the girl. Different actresses have been the face of the manic pixie dream girl movement at different times, one of the earliest being Shirley MacLaine, who was typecast as a variety of chatty but charming characters in films like The Apartment, Artists and Models, and Irma la Douce. In the 1960s and 70s, Goldie Hawn made a name for herself as a flirtatious flibberty-gibbet with films like Cactus Flower, Butterflies Are Free, and There's a Girl in My Soup. And she even revisited the character type again in 1992 for House Sitter. And I love that she sort of passed the baton to her daughter, Kate Hudson, who played one of the most legendary manic pixie dream girls, Penny Lane, in Almost Famous. These early depictions of the manic pixie dream girl, which also included the likes of I Love You Alice B. Toklas and What's Up Doc, influenced the direction of the character type. As people became more career-focused and materialistic in the 1980s, the manic pixie dream girl was a reminder that there were more important things in life, and feisty and free-spirited young women appeared in films like Who's That Girl?, Something Wild, Desperately Seeking Susan, and The Accidental Tourist. The 2000s is where the trend hit its stride, and Natalie Portman was heavily associated with the archetype early on in her career, with films like The Professional, Mr. Megorium's Wonder Emporium, Closer, and Garden State. But she didn't seem enthused by the association, saying, quote, "I appreciate that people are writing characters that are interesting and unusual, rather than some bland female character as the girlfriend in a movie. But when the point of the character in this movie is to help the guy have his arc, that's sort of the problem."
Blah, 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 blah. I make a noise or I do something that no one has ever done before, and then I can feel unique again, even if it's only for like a second.
Although most Manic Pixie Dream Girls were aimed at artsy 30-year-olds, the character type also appeared in teen films from the time period as a way of appealing to that demographic's desire to be accepted.
I like how you don't hide your problems like everyone else. And I feel like I don't have to hide mine when I'm around you.
This is the moment where you leave him and come with me. Is it? Yeah.
As a result, they often leaned into the angst of it all, with Emma Roberts playing the character type in Limelife, The Art of Getting By, and It's Kind of a Funny Story, and Kat Dennings in Charlie Bartlett, Daydream Nation, and To Write Love on Her Arms. But the Manic Pixie Dream Girl to end all Manic Pixie Dream Girls was Zooey Deschanel, who was cast as the quirky love interest in All the Real Girls, The Go-Getter, Flakes, Gigantic, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Yes Man, and 500 Days of Summer. Because she played these sorts of roles so often, audiences generally struggled to separate fact from fiction, something that wasn't helped by the fact that Zooey seemed to share many of her characters' kooky quirks, like her penchant for vintage dresses and her habit of bursting into song while strumming an ukulele. I mean, it was to the point that SNL even had an entire recurring skit called Being Quirky that was hosted by a ridiculous Zooey caricature. Because she was constantly reduced to being a Manic Pixie Dream Girl, it's no surprise then that Zooey attempted to reject the label, saying, quote, "I don't feel it's accurate. I'm not a girl. I'm a woman. It doesn't hurt my feelings, but it's a way of making a woman one-dimensional, and I'm not one-dimensional." Although remembered as a uniquely American fascination, Manic Pixie Dream Girls have appeared outside of Hollywood as well. In the 2000s, Audrey Tautou became the French face of the trope, appearing in films like Happy End, Priceless, and of course, Amelie. Meanwhile, in Bollywood, Anushka Sharma and Parneeti Chopra were frequently cast as manic pixie types, inspiring the male characters with their bold personalities before disappearing or dying. And if you're a fan of K-dramas, then you know that Manic Pixie Dream Girls are as much a staple of the genre as dramatic makeovers, car accidents, and piggyback rides. However, the vast majority of Manic Pixie Dream Girls in Hollywood are white, and to this day, there are only a handful of exceptions, which is actually one of the biggest criticisms of the trope. The film industry has long boxed women of color into narrow stereotypes: the angry black woman, the dragon lady, the spicy Latina, and casting them as Manic Pixie Dream Girls was considered too unrealistic. They were too sexy, too loud, and too brash to be seen as cute and quirky. Because she fulfills a very specific fantasy, the Manic Pixie Dream Girl is undeniably a product of the male gaze, but she's presented in a slightly different way than we're accustomed to. Instead of fetishizing her appearance with leering shots of her body, it's her personality that is presented in a voyeuristic manner. The Manic Pixie Dream Girl loves to cause mayhem, whether that means having a slap fight, yelling penis at the top of her lungs, pretending to be drunk, or committing petty crime. It's her way of rebelling against the status quo, while setting up the whole let loose sentiment that is often the film's main message. Now, she might be secretly struggling with her own issues, like a terminal illness or the death of a loved one, but that will never be the focus of the story. And while it may be inferred that this eccentric behavior is her way of dealing with trauma, there's never a proper explanation or resolution to it. Instead, we see how her spontaneity impacts the male character, with this chaotic, crazy energy awakening something new in him that helps him come to terms with his own arrested development. Because she's determined to do as she pleases, the Manic Pixie Dream Girl rarely takes on responsibility, and if she happens to be employed, then she works to live, not lives to work. Her job will be just relaxed enough that she can still express herself creatively, while never getting in the way of her adventures. Think waitress, receptionist, dancer, or dog walker. Because there's little potential for growth, she'll never intimidate the male character with her professional success, and because her job isn't as important as his, she can drop it at any time to entertain him. While her lack of social graces would be considered a downside in the real world, on screen they're part of her charm. Whether platonic or romantic, people find themselves drawn to her, but the Manic Pixie Dream Girl always keeps her distance and refuses to make personal connections. By making her a sort of outsider, it allows her and the male character to find common ground. The only difference is that she's a loner of her own volition, while he's just awkward, which allows him to maintain the fictionalized cool girl image he's conjured up for her. Because she refuses to associate with normies, It reinforces the idea that there's something special about him, that he's the exception to the rule. And the manic pixie dream girl's lack of friendship or family highlights how she doesn't actually have a life of her own, or more importantly, anyone to tell her, hey, this guy kinda sucks.
I like being on my own. Relationships are messy and people's feelings get hurt. Who needs it?
But the pictures make the world seem beautiful. So the exhibition's reassuring, which makes it a lie, and everyone loves a big fat lie.
Unlike normal women, the manic pixie dream girl refuses to buy into Hollywood's idea of happily ever after, and her apathy towards romance proceeds to become the greatest source of conflict between her and the male character. He wants to be in a relationship, she doesn't, and her inability to commit makes her love a prize. By putting her just out of his reach, she's the one who holds all of the cards, a dynamic that we don't often see play out on screen, as it's usually women who get strung along, and it's a subtle way of positioning her as the villain, a bitch, a tease. Now, the male character might have his fair share of commitment issues as well, but the reason for them will be addressed, usually being the product of his parents' divorce or a past failed relationship. But because the manic pixie dream girl is such a mystery, we'll never know why she's sending out such mixed signals. Regardless, the male character will convince himself that she actually does love him. She just needs a push, so he'll issue an ultimatum. In some instances, she stays true to her word, ending the relationship and leaving him high and dry. But more often than not, he'll wear her down and she'll admit her love for him, making him as life-changing to her as she was to him. In this sense, the manic pixie dream girl is a modern interpretation of the Muses, who were considered the inspirations behind ancient Greek literature, science, and the arts. This is represented in many of the films the character appears in, where after his time with her, the man will see improvements in both his professional and personal life, but she'll be in the exact same place he met her. She never creates, only inspires, and her inability to improve herself allows the male character to take credit for these accomplishments, as it was something he was always capable of with the right motivation. We can interpret this characterization as an extension of the writer-director's own desire to find a woman who mindlessly pursues him while still stimulating him emotionally, creatively, and sexually. The appeal of the manic pixie dream girl is her paradoxical nature. She has no problem with casual sex, but she's not a slut. She's beautiful, but she doesn't care about her appearance. She's confident, but also deeply insecure. She says that she doesn't care what other people think about her, but simultaneously insists on being the center of attention. And sure, an argument can be made that she's simply expressing herself, but oftentimes it just feels like a way of making sure that everyone knows she's different. And it's no wonder that she always gravitates towards bland people, as it's her way of ensuring that she'll always be the most interesting person in the room. Now, the manic pixie dream girl isn't always a coquettish young ingenue, as seen in 1971's Harold and Maude, where a gloomy young man falls in love with an eccentric older woman. Maude checks many of the manic pixie boxes. She plays a unique instrument, is incredibly optimistic, and isn't against breaking the law. But despite her interesting past being hinted at, neither Harold nor the film explore it, and when she dies, it simply gives Harold a reason to keep on living. This influenced other films in the genre like Sweet November, Autumn in New York, Love and Other Drugs, and Garden State, which primarily explored how the female character's illness and eventual death will impact the male lead. Occasionally, the manic pixie dream girl overlaps with the hooker with a heart of gold. In Closer, Alice is a stripper. In Breakfast at Tiffany's, Holly is a call girl. In The Girl Next Door, Danielle is a porn star. And in Birthday Girl, Nadia is a mail-order bride. Her sexual experience is depicted as a positive attribute, allowing the male character to explore a new side of himself. By saving him emotionally, he returns the favor by rescuing her from sex work, allowing an otherwise normal guy to become a hero. Over the years, certain film tropes have developed visual shorthands, like how the color pink combined with blonde hair is code for bimbo, or how glasses and suspenders automatically make you a nerd. The manic pixie dream girl is no exception to those sorts of costuming cues, and like other character types, these choices are a reflection of her personality. Some iterations of the manic pixie dream girl dress in a more hyper-feminine style, with sweet pastels, floral prints, lace tops, and dainty dresses. This emphasizes how her main function is as a love interest, while also making her appear more demure and innocent, giving the male character a reason to lower his guard and let her into his life. This sweet appearance also allows her to fulfill a more conventional male fantasy, one with children and a white picket fence, foreshadowing how he'll come to see her as his soulmate, even though he barely knows anything about her. Sometimes she takes on an edgier look that veers into punk territory, which is symbolic of her more confrontational behavior and her occasional pessimism. Think lots of eyeliner, platform boots, dark colors, choker necklaces, and leather jackets. While this might initially make her appear standoffish, it creates a greater juxtaposition to her relationship with the male protagonist, where she's chatty and friendly. Not to mention, also has a domineering edge that mirrors how she bosses him around. A handful of manic pixie dream girls opt for more casual looks with a slight tomboyish charm. Think band tees, hoodies, sneakers, and cargo pants. By seeming so at home and comfortable in her own skin, it once again reiterates how she isn't like other girls, which lures the male character into a state of belonging and relaxation. She's approachable, accessible, and most importantly, only wants to appeal to him. The most common style type is the quirky manic pixie dream girl, whose whimsical nature is mirrored by her over-the-top fashion choices. You know she's a weirdo just by looking at her. And much like her approach to life, there's no such thing as too much. The bigger and bolder, the better. She wears tutus, chunky jewelry, colorful tights, and crazy patterns. She loves to play around with her hair, whether that be with funky hats, cute little barrettes, or fluorescent hair dye. It's vaguely reminiscent of what a child would wear, tying into the idea that she's still connected to the effortless joy that most of us grow out of. And sometimes, but not always, she'll have a weird little pet. It's an eccentric, eclectic, and colorful fashion statement designed to make her stand out. Because the manic pixie dream girl isn't a creature of habit, she might switch between multiple, or even all, of these style philosophies. This randomness ties into how she's perceived by the male character, who's unable to make heads or tails of her personality. And one day she might look and act one way, and then totally different the next. Her style is as unusual and unique as she is, and her lack of concern for what's considered on-trend emphasizes her indifference towards others' opinions of her. Her attire isn't inherently sexualized in an attempt to appeal to men, but she still stands out, implying that she's still seeking out attention in some form. Although the character type had been around for decades, by giving it a catchy name in 2007, the manic pixie dream girl became easier to identify and replicate, resulting in both traditional and subversive iterations of the trope. Textbook examples as Rabin intended included The Last Kiss, Yes Man, Sweet November, and Along Came Polly, where the female characters are only there to help the male lead get over some type of trauma, but her own is never discussed. Subversions of the manic pixie dream girl include 500 Days of Summer, Closer, Paper Towns, and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. While at first glance there aren't many differences between them and their authentic counterparts, it's how the film frames her relationship with the male lead that turns the trope on its head. They make it clear that the mystery that surrounds her isn't because the character lacks personality, but because he's only focused on the parts of her that benefit him. And while he might accuse her of not following the script, to the audience it's clear that he just wasn't paying attention in the first place. When Nathan Rabin first coined the term, it was a criticism of a one-dimensional character type, but as it picked up traction, it started to be used to refer to any female character who had a remotely flamboyant personality. Actress Zoe Kazan, who played a subversion of the trope in 2012's Ruby Sparks, was annoyed by this misconception, saying, quote, "It's a way of describing female characters that's reductive and diminutive, and I think basically misogynist. I'm not saying that some of those characters that have been referred to as that don't deserve it. It's just a way of reducing people's individuality down to a type. I think that women get described that way, but it's really reflective of the man who's looking at them and the way that they think about that girl, not about who that girl really is or what her personality actually is. I think that to lump together all individual, original, quirky women under that rubric is to erase all differences. I don't want that term to survive. I want it to die." This sentiment was shared by Nathan Rabin himself, who apologized for coming up with the term in a 2014 essay, saying, quote, "I feel deeply weird, if not downright ashamed, at having created a cliche that has been trotted out again and again in an infinite internet feedback loop. Let's all try to write better, more nuanced and multidimensional female characters, women with rich inner lives and complicated emotions and total autonomy, who might strum ukuleles or dance in the rain, even when there are no men around to marvel at their free-spiritedness."
Manic Pixie Dream Girl wants you to do something you've never done before, like go swing dancing or smile.
Aside from an array of online parodies that made it clear that the average person found the character type cringy, at the time there was also a rise in feminist movements that demanded better representation in the media. This impacted how Hollywood depicted female characters, not only having them exhibit more agency and independence, but sometimes not giving them romantic plot lines at all. The manic pixie dream girl didn't fit into this new, empowering narrative, and she became a relic of a bygone era. But in recent years, she's staged a bit of a comeback, at least online. There's been a lot of interest in 2000s pop culture in the 2020s. At first, that meant dressing up like Paris Hilton and Britney Spears, but we've since moved on to other points of reference, and elements of manic pixie dream girl style have re-emerged in popular fashion trends like the frazzled Englishwoman, dopamine dressing, and the twee revival. You'll see it in people's skinny striped scarves, their hot pink stockings, their baby doll dresses, and their vintage Afghan coats. The renewed interest in manic pixie dream girl visuals has led to a reclamation of the trope, particularly among young neurodivergent women who see themselves reflected in the character's social awkwardness, creative quirks, and refusal to conform. Most women still see her as regressive, however, and she seems to represent the ultimate not like other girls girl, a pick-me who's trying way too hard to seem deep and different, when in actuality, she's just catering to a male fantasy. And in this day and age, where so many men are constantly complaining that no one wants to date them, the idea of a woman whose only purpose is to fix a broken man feels like the kind of wildly out-of-touch storyline only the incel community would get a kick out of. But that doesn't mean all hope is lost, and I would love to see a return of these unusual women on screen, but presented in a way that actually feels true to life. What are your thoughts on the manic pixie dream girl? I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye!